What we're talking about today is a very handy topic if you're thinking about starting a career in real estate. It's really a necessary requirement for starting a career in real estate, and that's passing your exams. So I said exams because there's two exams. And now just some basics here. If you guys already took the course, you probably already know that there's two exams. There's the class exam, and then there's also the state exam. Both of these exams are 100 questions. So both exams are 100 questions. But they do have separate scores. For the end of course exam, that's going to be 70%. For the state exam, you're going to need at least a 75%. Now, when we look at this here, 70% and 75%, you'll notice that's a pretty big margin of error. Out of 100 questions, you can miss 30 questions on the class exam, you can miss 25 questions on the state exam, and you're still going to pass. So that's a pretty large margin of error. You have a pretty big opportunity to miss some questions and still end up passing your exam. But don't let that thinking go to your head. You could talk to a lot of people that have not been able to pass the exam, and if you don't prepare to pass the exam, you're going to be in trouble. If you say, oh, I can miss 25, I could probably just guess at them all. Yes, they are all multiple choice. Every single question is A, B, C, D, multiple choice. You don't get deducted points. This is not like the SAT where you get deducted a point if you get a wrong answer. It's either you earn a point for selecting the one right answer, and there's only one of these are going to be the right answer, or you do not get a point. So as long as you can get 75 of these correct, you're going to be able to get your real estate license. But now the trick is, these are some very tricky answer choices here. The professional test writers whose job it is to write test questions come up with questions with very plausible alternative answers. So the answer B might be our correct answer. So answer B might be the one that we need to pick, but answer A will probably sound very similar. Answer C maybe still pretty similar, and answer D maybe we could eliminate that one. But it's very distracting because, and that's what they call these alternative answer choices. They call them distractors because they're meant to distract you from the right answer. The one piece of advice, the one tip, because we're going to be talking about how to build a whole plan to make sure you're passing your exam today, but the one piece of advice I would give every person taking either the class or the state exam is you need to learn everything in the course. As long as your school, hopefully you're taking the class with us. If you are, we're going to assure you you're going to learn everything you need to know. But as long as you're learning everything in the class, that's everything that's going to be on the exam. And so how this relates with the exam is if you don't remember it from the class, it's not going to be your answer. Everything on this exam comes off the Florida Real Estate Commission syllabus. So everything is dictated to us from the Florida Real Estate Commission of the need to know information. Now, where you do have your differences, because yes, every school has to follow or is supposed to follow this Florida Real Estate Commission syllabus, but this is just the key points that you need to know. There's different ways to go about learning them and explaining them so you truly understand them rather than just the key thing that is that they're presenting to you there. So if you've gone through the course, you should remember everything from the course, but now there's so much stuff you're learning in this course. So much stuff. It makes it a little bit hard. And with every single chapter, you will have a percentage of how many questions are going to be on the exam. So you kind of know how to gear yourself towards certain areas. But let's talk about kind of making your plan for this. So this is the goal that you need to have in mind. You need at least 70% for the class exam, at least 75% for the state exam. Those are 100 questions, so 70 questions right here and 75 questions right there. It sounds easy, but when you get that test in front of you and you see some of these compelling distractor answer choices, you'll find out, okay, yeah, if it's very easy. Don't get me wrong, this is a very easy exam to pass if, and this is the big if, you know the material. If you know the material, it's very easy to pass because you could see right through the distractor information. But if you're at all have not 100% confidence in the material, that's going to be where you're going to have trouble with this stuff here. So it's really all about making sure you know the material. This isn't an IQ test. You could be the smartest person in the world, and if you don't know the material, you'll probably still fail this exam. You could be the best test taker in the world, but if you don't know the material, you would probably still not pass this exam. But you could be the least smartest person in the world. The least smartest. You could have the lowest IQ. As long as you could read and you know the material, you could pass the exam. The key thing with this, like I said, is knowing the material. So that's what really our main goal is in all of our review and reinforcing and studying, whatever you want to call it, that you're doing to prepare for this exam. Number one, yes, you learn the information in the course. And so it does vary by individual. Some people, they're like a sponge where they could sit there and they take in the material and they're just completely bringing everything in and they're not forgetting a single word. It's a very rare type of person, but those people are out there. And that type of person might be able to just sit through the class and then go pass the exam. However, that is very unlikely, and being that type of person is a very rare. I thought I was that type of person. Because going through school, through college, I was able to always kind of fake my way through tests and whatnot, and kind of use some educated guesses and whatnot. And be like, okay, yeah, I get this, I get this, I get that, without having to do much studying. Now, I could still say that I did pass my exams the first time, but before I went and took my exams, I did take a practice exam because everybody was telling me, oh, this is serious, this is a tough exam. I was like, okay. Tried out a little practice exam, found out my test-taking skills were not what I thought they were, so I really had to drill down, review, and reinforce this material. And once I was confident in my knowledge of the material, that exam was very easy, and I was able to pass my first time. And you'll be able to pass your first time as well if you're confident in the material, if you know the information. And that's mainly our key goal here, is to get you to know. So that's our goal. This is what we need to be shooting for, how it is we go about getting you to make sure you're confident in your knowledge of the material. And we're going to be talking about some ways to kind of help you develop your own study plan for this after this commercial break. So stick with us. I'm John Chrismo. You're watching Ask the Instructor.
When you look back on your real estate career, you'll remember the moment you decided to begin this journey. The moment when you finally decided it was time for change. The moment when you decided it was time to take charge. The moment that changed the direction of your life forever. Now is that moment. Need help preparing for your exam? We've got you covered. Join us for a structured weekend review class where we'll cover the topics you need to know to pass your class and state exams. Class sizes are limited, so reserve your seat now by calling 813-928-0106 or registering online at tampaschoolofrealestate.com. Have you been thinking about starting a real estate career but are struggling to find the time to go back to school? Allow us to introduce our revolutionary online course platform. At the Tampa School of Real Estate, we have used our years of education experience and student feedback to bring you the finest and best online course. Visit tampaschoolofrealestate.com, that's tampaschoolofrealestate.com, or call us at 813-928-0106, that's 813-928-0106 to learn more and register for our online course today. After the show, be sure to visit tampaschoolofrealestate.com. Again, that's tampaschoolofrealestate.com, where you'll find all the information you need to start your career in real estate. Also, be sure to check out our Success Center, where you'll find helpful tips for building a successful real estate career.
Hey, if you liked the show today, be sure to hit like and subscribe and post your comments. Thanks so much for watching. Hey, welcome back to this week's episode of Ask the Instructor. This is brought to you by the Tampa School of Real Estate. We're your headquarters for passing your exam, whether you need to take the Florida Real Estate Commission required course or you're trying to use some of our study tools to help yourself prepare. What we're talking about today is how to prepare yourself a plan to pass on your first try. Now, before the break, we kind of emphasized the reason why it's important to have this plan, or even if you don't have a plan, to just do some of these things on one of these plans we're going to be putting together here to help you get ready for the exam. The reason is so much of this information and so much of this test, really 100% of this test, isn't based on how smart you are. It's based on whether or not it is you know the material. So the goal we have here is to know the material. So now, regardless of whether you're going through, and this is the first thing I'd recommend with this here, and this is when you're first learning the information. So really that's your first step with this, is to learn information. The necessary information, the information off the Florida Real Estate Commission syllabus, and have it be presented to you in a way that makes sense. But now step 2 falls right along with step 1. You really don't complete step 1 when you're working on step 2 here, because step 2, what you want to also factor in is as you go through this material, you progress through this section by section. You start learning about the real estate business, then some general license law stuff. Then you get into different brokerage relationships and brokerage operations and escrow money. You probably forgot the first thing I mentioned, or maybe even the second thing that I just mentioned, and that's how your memory works. Learning this information just the one time, it's almost impossible to remember what was in the very beginning of the course at the end of the course, unless you're reinforcing this information along the way. So that's our step 2. Reinforce along the way. So as you go through and you're learning this information, you get onto the second unit, the second chapter, you're on the second day of the class. You don't want to forget about the first stuff that you learned in that first day, in that first unit, in that first module. Whether you're taking this, like I said, this applies classroom or online. You're learning the information, but if you have ever heard that expression, if you don't use it, you lose it. That's absolutely true for this. You might have heard that with learning a language. You use it, you lose it. In real estate, it has its own language. And if you use it, you won't lose it. But if you don't use it, you will lose it. So as you learn the information, the key thing you want to do here is reinforce this along the way. As you're going through, go back to a previous section. Make sure you have that down. And now the key thing with this reinforcement along the way, and this will really help you to where you're ready to maybe just had finished the course and you're ready already to take the exam. You're already 100% confident in the material. And it depends on how fast it is you're progressing through the course of how much reinforcement really you need to do for this stuff here to really make sure it is that you know it. It could just be something that you don't know as well, and that's going to require a little bit more reinforcement. Maybe you're doing a math problem that you don't quite understand. And you guys have probably heard me say it a bunch of times on this Ask the Instructor show when we've gone through and solved some math problems, is as you're going through and solving these problems, it doesn't seem that clear at first, but the more repetition you have, the more times you're doing these over and over and over again, the clearer it starts to become, and the more you start to remember it, the more you start to understand it. Repetition is the mother, the father, the uncle, the parent, the overlord, whatever you want to call it, of learning. Repetition leads to learning. Remembering what you learned at least. If you only get this information the one time, you're going to forget it. If you reinforce it along the way, you go through, and before you get to day 2, you go through and review the stuff you learned on day 1 or in module 1. And really what you want to do is you want to keep referencing back to this stuff here. So we have section 1, section 2, section 3. When you get to the end of section 1, maybe just do a brief recap over section 1. You get to the end of section 2, you don't want to just recap section 2, you want to go back and recap section 1 and make sure you have that down. Maybe you do have section 1 down at this point, so then you move on to section 3, you recap section 3, then you go back, recap section 2. Then you get to section 4, you go through section 4, you go recap section 3, but you say, hey, look, let me go back and make sure I still have this stuff down from section 1. And you may be working your way back that way. So don't forget about section 1, section 2, because you're going to get all the way out to 19 sections. There's 19 different units, different sections, different modules, whatever you want to call it, that need to be taught off of the Florida Real Estate Commission syllabus. And when you get down to number 19, if you have not been reinforcing along the way like this, you're going to forget what happened in these first 2, 3, 4 chapters. And guess what? Section number 5 is a 12% of your exam chapter. This is one of the biggest chapters in the course that you need to know is Section 5, and it's way there at the beginning. You're only about a quarter of the way through the course when you get to Section 5. You still have so much more to learn after this, but you got to go back and reinforce this because there's a lot of important information in this first part of the course. They don't start off with stuff that's really not too important. They start hitting you with stuff they're going to test you on right away. So reinforce along the way. And now, if you're trying to find a way to do this, I know everyone has busy, hectic lives, especially if you're doing one of our evening classes. I'm sure you have a day job or you have kids, or if you're in a day class, maybe you have a night job and you have kids, and you're trying to juggle all this together. And you really don't need to spend hours on end reviewing this information. If you get all the way from Section 1 to Section 19, and you're deciding now to go back and review this stuff, you're going to need hours upon hours upon hours to make sure you remember this stuff, because you're probably going to be relearning some of this stuff again. You're going to be relearning some of this stuff again if you wait until the end to start reviewing. That's why I say Step 2, you're going to be doing concurrently at the same time as Step 1 of learning the information, so you can go back and reinforce this stuff along the way. Because if you're going all the way back, you got to relearn some stuff. But if you're going from 2 to 1, from 3 to 1, from 4 to 1, and you just keep going back and back and back over and over, and you're reinforcing it, you might only have to spend 5 minutes reviewing Chapter 1 when you get to Chapter 2, and you might only have to spend maybe 10 minutes reviewing Chapter 2 when you're on Chapter 3. These very small little increments that you're doing to review this year, then when you get to the end, if you've been good about this and you've been going back and reviewing it, you might not even need any additional review when it comes down to the end of this year. So this is such a huge thing to reinforce along the way. Don't wait until you're done learning to go back and reinforce this information and review this information. Reinforce it along the way. Make sure you have it down. Make sure you have it. And especially if you're one of the classroom courses, this is the best time where you can ask your instructor one of these questions about, hey, I don't quite understand what this was back here in this thing we covered the other day. Whereas if you wait all the way to the end to ask the questions, you probably don't even remember what that question was. And you maybe would have understood it better if you asked it a little bit closer to when you had actually learned that. So reinforce along the way. This is such a major, important part of reviewing for your exam and making sure you're going to pass your exam the right way, because it's really going to save you in the long run. You could wait until the end right before your exam and try to cram everything in, and that can be effective as well, but it's going to take more time as opposed to you reinforcing along the way. So the third thing I recommend doing, and let's touch on this real quick. So learning the information, reinforcing along the way. Should you be reinforcing everything? Not particularly. You want to reinforce. If you're reinforcing everything, it's going to take just as long as you went through the course, and you're basically duplicating, if not more, the hours in the course outside of that, which we don't want that. That's not an effective use of your time. So what you want to focus and hone in on are the key points that you need to know out of each section. We give you guys highlights of all these sections and the key points and the key aspects and the key things it is that you need to know. And if you're looking for a great way to reinforce along the way, a little shameless sales pitch right here, but it's really helpful and really useful. That's why I don't feel bad about telling you guys about this. It's our MP3 audio. So our MP3 audio review, it goes through chapter by chapter, reviewing each one of these key points. And what's great about this, you could just pop it in when you're at the gym, put it in your headphones. You could download it right on your phone. You could download it onto a CD if you want. You get instant access to this, so you can start working on it right away. And you kind of just pop this in, whether it's when you're driving to work, when you're at the gym. But this is great for reinforcing along the way. And this is almost a little bit more autonomous way of going through this here. I mean, maybe you could try putting the headphones on while you're sleeping with the MP3 there, but check that out. That's on our website. You can even get a free preview of the first chapter if you go to tampaschoolofrealestate.com/MP3. That's tampaschoolofrealestate.com/MP3. So check that out, because that's really great for helping you reinforce this information as you go along. Now we're going to take another short break here, but when we come back, we're going to be talking about the third thing you could do to make sure you know the material. This is our goal we're kind of working on here, making sure you know the information. Number one, you learn it. Number two, you reinforce along the way. And number three, we'll get to that right after this break. Stay with us. You're watching Ask the Instructor.
When you look back on your real estate career, you'll remember the moment you decided to begin this journey. The moment when you finally decided it was time for change. The moment when you decided it was time to take charge. The moment that changed the direction of your life forever. Now is that moment. Need help preparing for your exam? We've got you covered. Join us for a structured weekend review class where we'll cover the topics you need to know to pass your class and state exams. Class sizes are limited, so reserve your seat now by calling 813-928-0106 or registering online at tampaschoolofrealestate.com. Have you been thinking about starting a real estate career but are struggling to find the time to go back to school? Allow us to introduce our revolutionary online course platform. At the Tampa School of Real Estate, we have used our years of education experience and student feedback to bring you the finest and best online course. Visit tampaschoolofrealestate.com, that's tampaschoolofrealestate.com, or call us at 813-928-0106, that's 813-928-0106 to learn more and register for our online course today. After the show, be sure to visit tampaschoolofrealestate.com. Again, that's tampaschoolofrealestate.com, where you'll find all the information you need to start your career in real estate. Also, be sure to check out our Success Center, where you'll find helpful tips for building a successful real estate career.
Hey, if you liked the show today, be sure to hit like and subscribe and post your comments. Thanks so much for watching. Hey, welcome back to this week's episode of Ask the Instructor. I'm John Chrismo, and this show is brought to you by the Tampa School of Real Estate, your Florida real estate license headquarters. You want a real estate license, you come see us for the fastest, quickest, easiest, most efficient way to get that done. We have classroom courses, online courses, and a bunch of exam prep study tools. Make sure you check out our website, tampaschoolofrealestate.com. That's tampaschoolofrealestate.com, or call us at 813-928-0106. That's 813-928-0106. Today, what we're talking about is how to pass your exam. And with this type of exam, we talked about this in the first segment, and if you guys are watching this, make sure you go back and rewatch the beginning of this if you're just joining us here, to make sure you know why you need to go through all this. The reason why is this is a very easy exam, but only if you are confident in your knowledge of the material. If you're confident in your knowledge of the information, you should be good. But if you're not confident in that knowledge, this is where the exam could start to trip you up. So basically our study plan, number one, you need to learn the information. You need to get yourself enrolled in a FREC-approved course. I recommend our courses because I could guarantee you we have the best courses in the state of Florida. So definitely check us out on the website, tampaschoolofrealestate.com, and find out more about that. We've got great online courses, classroom courses, and all the study tools you need. But some way or another, you're going to need to learn the information, number one. Number two, you need to reinforce this information along the way. So reinforcing the information along the way, there's a lot of ways you could do it. One of the ways that I recommended was our MP3 audio review. And with this MP3 audio review, you could pop it in your ears when you're at the gym. You could put it on in your car and basically just listen chapter by chapter of the key points of each section. So it's a really good way to make sure you're not forgetting about the stuff in the first couple of chapters along the way. Now, the next thing is test your knowledge. So you want to learn the information, reinforce it along the way, and then test your knowledge. Test your knowledge to make sure that you're really taking away what you need to take away from the information it is that you're learning. And like I said, this is the reason why I passed my exam the first time. If I didn't do step 3, I probably would have got a failure notice on that first exam attempt that I would have took. But I went and tested my knowledge. I found out I was not confident in the information. I found out that I was easily distracted by the distractor wrong answer choices. So the testing your knowledge really enlightens you and lets you know before you even get to the exam whether or not it is that you're fully prepared. And with this testing of your knowledge, Pretty much every course is going to have some questions in there or anything like that. Our courses, in the textbook, you have every single chapter, you have a unit exam. In our online course, every single section, you have little practice questions, and there's practice exams in our course as well as in our online course. But there's a very large bank of information that they use for the state exam. And what I had found out when I went through this, because I would go through and I'd answer all the course questions when I went to go get my real estate license, and I was like, okay, maybe I'd get something wrong, and I'd go back and learn why I got that wrong, and then I would see those same questions again when I would try those same exact questions, and I would be like, oh okay, I got it now. And then I went to go take a practice exam. I was like, oh, wait a minute, these aren't the same questions I just went off of. And that's because there's such a large bank of information. The state exam is over 600 different questions. I think it's closer up to about 700 questions they use now to test you on to make sure that you know this material. And they're constantly adding new questions every single day to make that number larger and larger and larger, to build up their bank of questions, to make sure that, and it's all based on the same information, but there's different ways of asking about it. And you need to understand this information from every angle they could really ask about it, and testing your knowledge really makes sure that you know that. So you want to do yourself some practice quizzes. There's tons of them in the courses, but I would recommend really going, because this is the telltale sign. And if you're going through and you're answering all these practice quizzes and practice questions and you're getting 100% the first time, you probably won't need to do anything extra. But if you're having some trouble, like I said, I had trouble with the questions. I went back and corrected it. And then I'd see those same questions, exact same questions again. I'd retry them and I'd get it because I remember the question. This is where, again, we have another study tool that might be good for you. This is our exam question bank. So our exam question bank simulator, this is an online tool. You could use it on your computer, you could use it on your tablet, you could use it on your phone, and it's got hundreds of questions in there, and you could basically go through, and not only does it tell you that you're right or wrong, but it also will give you a detailed explanation to every single question as to why it is you're right or wrong. So you're learning why it is that was the right answer, which is so essential when you're going through and testing your knowledge. Whatever way you're going through this, whether you're using our exam question bank or not, make sure when you get a question wrong, you find out why you're getting that question wrong. You understand why, so you don't make that same mistake again, because it's likely that question could show up on your exam. So this question bank is great because it allows you to go through and answer these questions and basically really test your knowledge to make sure it is that you're getting the information that you need, and that you know that you could kind of weed through and decipher. And this really proves, this test, it tests whether or not you're confident in the material. You could test yourself, or you could let the state test you for like $30, $40, $38 I think they're charging right now for the state exam, and that's per attempt. So you could let them test you at about $40 a pop, or you could use some sort of study tool. I recommend our exam question bank. It's got hundreds of questions you could go through. It's all structured just like the state exam, A, B, C, D. When you're doing these questions, I definitely recommend practicing with these multiple choice questions so you get used to eliminating this distractor information. So that's a great tool to use. We also have like books if you want a hard copy of this. You don't want to do it online, call it up. We have an exam book that's got a bunch of questions in it, and it still has those detailed answers in the back of this. But definitely practice with some practice questions. At the very least, make sure you're not just Christmas treeing the questions in your course or in the textbook or whatever it is that you're doing. Make sure that you're really truly, because you're only doing yourself a disservice if you're just trying to get through this stuff quickly. I know a lot of people that take the online courses, they'll just kind of click through the questions until they get it right and just move on to the next section, but you're really setting yourself up for failure at that point. You want to read through these questions, make sure you understand it, because those questions, they're not there to make your life difficult, they're there to prepare you for the exam. So you need to be testing your knowledge whenever you go through and to see if you're ready. So, number one, learn the information. As you're learning the information, you need to reinforce along the way. Like I said, we have our MP3 audio review that's great. You could make flashcards. We actually give digital flashcards, whether you're in our online course or our classroom course. With our courses, you get digital flashcards already that you could go through and flip through to make sure you know the information. The audio is a really great passive way almost to make sure that you're getting this information in, because you could put it in while you're driving. I do not recommend using flashcards while you're driving. This is maybe a little bit better if you do a lot of commuting and you want to study at that time. But then you still need to test your knowledge, Because you could do all these 2 steps and then just go take your exam and find out you didn't know the information, or you could test your knowledge ahead of time to say, hey, I need to go back. And that's where you need to go back to relearn some of this stuff and then reinforce the stuff. So step 3 will really tell you if you need to go back to step 1. So that exam question bank is a really great tool. Now, our 4th step here. Our 4th step, this one is very important as well. Without this 4th step, it basically eliminates these previous 3 steps. And this one is about being confident. So you need to be confident in this information. It's not enough just to know the information or even just to think you know the information. If you only think you know the information, you're not ready yet. You need to go back and do some of these things to make sure you're confident in the knowledge. Now, this whole thing is about if you want to pass your exam on the first try. If you don't want to pass your exam on the first try, then yeah, you could wing it, take the test over and over again. It's going to cost you $40 a pop every time you go to take that exam, and it's a lot of frustration and heartache and pain going through and taking this and not passing this. But if you're confident in your knowledge, you've done these steps, you've reinforced along the way, you've tested your knowledge, and you're confident in that information, you should do great passing. And if you're looking for a way to make yourself confident, the confidence builder in this is where I'd recommend our weekend review class. So this weekend review class could be used 2 different ways. If you're following these 1, 2, 3, 4 steps here like I recommend, the weekend review class is really just to help build your confidence, because with this, we're going through and we're reviewing the information. And in this place here, you have an actual state certified instructor there in front of you that's been approved by the Florida Real Estate Commission as an expert on this information and also vetted thoroughly by us. We don't just let anybody teach these weekend review classes. I'm actually doing one this weekend myself. And we have one other instructor currently that is the only instructor that's at a high enough level to do these weekend review classes. We're very strict on this situation because we want 100% accurate information that you're getting. And so our weekend review classes are great because we put you in this environment and we're going through this information again. And this is a great confidence builder even if you already know the information. It's letting you go through and as we're going through reviewing this information, you're either going to do 1 or 2 things. There's 1 of 2 things that are going to happen. Yes, I do know that, or no, I don't know that. And if you're getting a lot of no, I don't know that, that's where you need to go back and revisit some of these previous 3 steps. But if you're getting to the 4th step here of trying to get that confidence, you think you know everything, you've been doing good with these practice questions, and you really just want to build the confidence and make sure that you got this stuff down pat, that's where our weekend review class is great. Now, the alternative usage of our weekend review class that we see a lot of students do is if it's been a long time and you need almost a refresher on this information. Maybe you're going through and you're testing your knowledge and there's some things here and there that you don't quite get. You're going through this and maybe it's been a month or 2 months or maybe a year since you've taken the exam. That's where the weekend review class is very helpful. It's 16 hours, really 14 hours when you take out time for lunch, Saturday and Sunday, where we basically kind of cram in all the entire important information from the course. We go through the math problems, we go through chapter by chapter, reviewing everything that you need to know. So that weekend review class, the cram class, we'll put here cram. That's exactly what this is. And now if you do one of these cram classes, my recommendation if you take the cram class is to do it right before your state exam. Take one of these classes and schedule your state exam for the day after, the Tuesday after, the Wednesday after. Anything further than that, you're going to start losing this information. You need to make sure you're reinforcing this through other methods here. But that weekend review class is very effective. We get students calling us in all the time, emailing us. You could go read reviews online, on Facebook, on Google, of people that have taken this review class and they're able to pass their exam on the first try because this is a very thorough review. And if you know all the information already, this is going to help build your confidence. And that confidence is key because when you have 4 answer choices and 3 of them seem really convincing, one of them maybe not so much, and you can eliminate this down. You're down to 3 answer choices, and 2 of them maybe are the ones that are very close, and you're really kind of stuck. That's where this weekend review, because again, all of this is just based on your knowledge of the material. The whole goal that you need to keep in mind when you're reviewing and studying this information is to make sure that you are confident in your knowledge. If you're confident in the knowledge, you won't be easily distracted by the tricks that the exam likes to pull when they're giving you these test questions. So just to recap what we have here. So number one, you're learning the information. You need to learn the information. There's a requirement by the state of Florida, by the Florida Real Estate Commission, that requires you to at least learn the information and take the course. That's the purpose of this course, is to learn this information. But now this is where it's on you to make sure you know that information. Yes, you might be the very lucky 1 in a million type of person that could sit through a room, especially with this much information that you maybe have never heard of before. Because there's stuff that you learn in these courses all the time where people just have no idea that this stuff even existed. So you're learning a lot of obscure information, but it's all about real estate. So you need to make sure you're learning this information. It's required by the Florida Real Estate Commission, but then you still need to reinforce along the way. You need to reinforce along the way as you go through chapter by chapter, reviewing and honing yourself in on this information, the key points. You don't need to reinforce everything. The textbook we use in the class is like 600 pages long. So that's a huge textbook, and we don't expect you to know every last word in the textbook. The textbook is merely there to help explain these key concepts. So you really just need to hone in on the key points out of each section. And that key point audio review is a great tool that's available. You can download that instantly, get instant access, listen to it on your phone, listen to it through your computer, in your car, wherever it is that you have time to pop in earbuds or put it on in your car. That's great for reinforcing along the way. You don't want to just reinforce it along the way, though. You want to also test your knowledge. Because if you just do step 1 and step 2, learn it and reinforce it, you may be good enough, but how do you know whether or not you're good enough? You could let the Pearson VUE Testing Center tell you, no, you're not good enough in your knowledge of the information, or you could test the knowledge yourself. Go through and answer professionally written, formatted like the state exam questions, and that's where our exam question bank comes in. That's a great tool. We have a bunch of other tools. This is the one I recommend because it's all digital, it's all electronic. You can pull the phone out of your pocket when you have a couple minutes and just work through and do a couple of questions, and this is what makes it great, where you can kind of spread this out here and there rather than just sitting there in a room for hours on end trying to review and reinforce this information. So that question bank is a tool I highly recommend. I used a very primitive version of this back when I got my real estate license, and it greatly helped me, and I strongly recommend the exam question bank to, at the very least, do some sort of questions. We also have a book if you prefer something on paper where you want to go through actually on paper. A little bit harder to carry the book around with you, which is why I say the exam question bank. You're probably more likely to use that than crack open a big heavy book of test questions. That could get a little monotonous, but that exam question bank, it's great. It saves all your answers. You could redo questions as many times as you want. You could focus specifically on the ones you got wrong. It tells you why you're getting questions wrong. So that's a great tool to test your knowledge, which is very essential to make sure it's not Pearson VUE or the state of Florida telling you, no, you don't know the information. It's you saying, no, I don't know it yet. Let me go through and keep working on this. No, I still don't know it yet. Let me go through and keep working on this. Now, the last one is being confident in this information. Like I said, these are professionally written exam questions. Even though it's multiple choice and the answer is going to be right there staring you in the face, it's your job to eliminate the wrong answers, the distractors. They actually call them distractors. That's a word from the test makers who make this test. They call the wrong answers distractors. The wrong answers aren't going to be a cupcake, a muffin, and random stuff that you could easily eliminate. This isn't grade school. This is a state-mandated test to make sure you know this information. And if you're not, you may know this information. And I see this so much where students know the information. They're like, hey, look, you know this stuff. Trust your instincts. But you need to be confident in this. Testing your knowledge will help make you confident in this. Once you're able to score 100% on every exam and every question that it throws at you, that'll help build up your confidence. But if you need something more to help build your confidence, that's where I recommend our Week in Review cram course. And this is also very effective if it's been a while since you've taken the course and you want to kind of refresh and reload on this information. Maybe you're going through and doing a bunch of these test questions here and you don't really understand why. So that's where this Week in Review class is a great tool. And it's very nice because it's structured. These two tools, the audio review and the question bank, these are great if you're a little bit more disciplined, because these questions aren't going to answer themselves. That's based on you going in there and answering these questions. The audio review isn't going to turn itself on in your car. You got to pop it in there, plug your phone in, or burn it to a CD and put that CD in there and hit play. And if you like listening to music, it's tough to listen to that. I used to love listening to music, and just to give you a quick tidbit, now I like crave audiobooks in the car because I basically built that culture within me. But that took a lot of self-discipline to do that. So these two require some discipline on your part. The weekend review class, this is great because it's structured. It's across 2 days. It crams all the information in. It's going to make sure that you're confident in this material. And if you're not confident in the material after walking on this exam review class, then that's where it tells you, hey, I need to go back and answer some questions. That's where I need to go back and re-listen to this audio review. Maybe I need to take this cram class again once I feel like I'm more prepared. Because what I recommend is taking this weekend review cram class right before you take your state exam. Schedule your state exam for the Monday, the Tuesday, the Wednesday right after this, preferably the Monday, because I had a student one time, and I quote, saying, hey, I'm so glad I took your review class this weekend. I could hear your voice talking in my head, but you know what? I just took it this morning, and I've already forgot like half the information that's in there, and that's, like I said, you don't use this information, you lose it. So this cram is very effective, but it's just like weight loss. If you lose weight very quickly, you're very likely to put it back on very quickly. But if you lose weight slowly, it'll take longer for you to put it back on. Same way with learning information. If you learn this information very quickly, it's very effective. If you take your exam Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, preferably Monday, right there after you take that weekend review class, it's very effective. But if you're waiting a month after you took this class was basically pointless. It might serve some purpose, but with this cram class, since it's so much clustered information so close together, you want to do that right before you take your exams. This is also helpful for the class exam as well, so you can take this right before the class exam. We have a lot of students that will take their class exam and then their state exam the next day. They'll do this on the weekend, and they'll have their class exam scheduled for that week, and they'll do the state exam the very next day. Even if you know all the information, make sure you're confident in this material. Where you'd be okay coming to me in my face and feeling like you could correct me when I'm wrong. That's when you know that you're confident in the material. So you need to be confident with this stuff. If you're not confident, that exam is going to tear you up. It's all based on your knowledge of this information, but this information, there's so much of it, number one, and number two, this isn't your typical day-to-day average person thinking about what are the core elements of a deed, or thinking about who has to sign a deed, or who's the mortgagor and who's the mortgagee. So this information, it does require reinforcement to make sure you don't forget it, because remember, if you do not use it, you lose it. We'll be right back after this short commercial break. Stay with us. You're watching Ask the Instructor.
When you look back on your real estate career, you'll remember the moment you decided to begin this journey. The moment when you finally decided it was time for change. The moment when you decided it was time to take charge. The moment that changed the direction of your life forever. Now is that moment. Need help preparing for your exam? We've got you covered. Join us for a structured weekend review class where we'll cover the topics you need to know to pass your class and state exams. Class sizes are limited, so reserve your seat now by calling 813-928-0106 or registering online at tampaschoolofrealestate.com. Have you been thinking about starting a real estate career, but are struggling to find the time to go back to school? Allow us to introduce our revolutionary online course platform. At the Tampa School of Real Estate, we have used our years of education experience and student feedback to bring you the finest and best online course. Visit tampaschoolofrealestate.com. That's tampaschoolofrealestate.com, or call us at 813-928-0106. That's 813-928-0106 to learn more and register for our online course today. After the show, be sure to visit tampaschoolofrealestate.com. Again, that's tampaschoolofrealestate.com, where you'll find all the information you need to start your career in real estate. Also, be sure to check out our Success Center, where you'll find helpful tips for building a successful real estate career.
Hey, if you liked the show today, be sure to hit like and subscribe and post your comments. Thanks so much for watching. Hey, welcome back to Ask the Instructor. This week's episode, we're talking about how to pass your exam on the first try. We've talked about the 4 steps to basically make sure you know this information. Number 1, learning it. Number 2, reinforcing it. Number 3, testing that information. And number 4, being confident in that knowledge. We talked about some great study tools that you could use to really make sure that you have the confidence, that you could test your knowledge, that you could reinforce it as you go along. And if you could do these things, and you're confident in this information, if you go through these 4 steps and you've really gone through these 4 steps, you've extremely tested your information, you should pass your exam on the first try. I have no doubt in my mind if you work these 4 steps and you go through the information and you're really putting it in here and doing the work for this. Like I said, you're not being passive about it. You're actually learning why you're getting questions wrong. You're paying attention if you're in the weekend review class. You're actually listening to the audio review. If you do these things, you should pass your exam on the first try. Now, I did mention our specific study tools out here. There are other study tools available. There's lots of companies that sell these study tools, but I would be very wary. And it's not just me trying to sell our services and our products and whatnot. The reason why is a lot of these study and exam prep sites, even if it's these nationally published books, that key word there is national. So you want something that's very Florida specific. Florida is very different in the laws and the ways real estate works compared to so many other states. I've taught so many students that have real estate license in other states, and they have such a hard time with this because Florida is so vastly different than how things work in other states. So when you're taking this information, and that's why we have these study tools, so you don't need to go to some other place to get these done, because our study tools, we vetted this information and we specialize only in Florida licensing. Maybe someday in the future when we're ready to specialize in other states, we will. But we only serve Florida licensing and work with Florida licensing because we specialize in Florida real estate licensing. We want to be the best we can be specifically in Florida. So make sure when you're getting exam prep tools that they're specifically based on Florida. Anytime it's a nationwide type of exam prep, whether it's an exam prep online system or it's a textbook or anything they're buying that's not specific to Florida, and it's not, also the other thing is these laws change every year. We use a brand new textbook every single year where it has new information on the new laws. And when these rules update, they don't use the old laws on the exam, they're using the new information. So make sure you're also using current information. When you use our study materials, I guarantee you, number 1, it's going to be the best, most comprehensive tools you could use. Number 2, it's specific to Florida. And number 3, it's up to date, which those are the 3 things you need. And if you have tools that are up to date, that are specific to Florida, and that are very comprehensive, and you're actually using them, you should have no trouble passing. But now, I'm sure some of you guys that are tuning in today, maybe you've already taken your exam before. And now is the chance to be born again and to pass your exam on the first try after today. Forget about those times that you've not passed your exam. But if this does happen, don't feel bad. It's a tough exam, but I'll tell you why you didn't pass that exam. And I get excuses all the time when people are talking to me and they tell me why they didn't pass the exam. But when it comes down to it, and I don't mean to be mean, I don't mean to offend anybody here, but you're not confident in the knowledge. Whether it's you're not confident in the knowledge because you don't know the information, or maybe you just think you know the information, or you do know the information, but you kind of question your knowledge of that. It's all about being confident in the knowledge. So if you've already taken the exam, the weekend review is a really great thing to go through, especially if maybe you've taken some other online course, or you've taken a course with another school. Not to say they might have wrong information or bad information, but I've heard some things from people that have taken other courses from other schools, other online courses, and they've came to our weekend review classes and they're like, oh, I didn't know that at all. I thought it was completely this other way. So that's a great way to kind of help you relearn and refresh on the information correctly. And that's why I do recommend our study tools so great. But if, like I said, you don't pass your exam the first try, don't get yourself down on it. You just need to build up that confidence. That could require you to test your knowledge. That could require you to reinforce this knowledge a little bit more, to go back and relearn and review and refresh on some of this information. But take that sheet that they're going to give you. Because when you pass your state exam, they actually don't tell you what score you got. Believe it or not, you don't get to find out your score. You either find out that you pass Or you do get a score if you don't pass. If you fail the exam, if you don't pass the exam, you do find out a score. So you get to find out how close you are. But if you pass, you don't know if you got a 75% or 100%. It's a mystery. You just have your license. No one's ever able to find out. No one ever knows how many times it took you to take your exam and pass your exam. I've known people that I've worked with and helped them pass their exam that took their exam 7 and 8 times before. And that persistence is really a great indicator on how your future is going to look in real estate when you're that persistent. But don't get yourself discouraged because you just need to build up that confidence. This is a very hard exam. Even if you're the smartest person in the world, you could not pass this exam. It's not based on how smart you are. It's based on whether you know the material. The Florida Real Estate Commission wants to make sure you know this information to make sure you have a minimal competence in real estate as it relates to Florida. So that's really everything I got for you guys to help you pass your exam on your first try. These are the 4 steps that we use that we've honed in on that are the key things that are important, and that's why we offer these study tools to help you out right along the way. Number 1, learning the information. Like I said, that's going to be the FREC course that's required. You need to take this course. The Florida Real Estate Commission requires this FREC course. They call it Course 1, the pre-licensing course. You need to take that. So this is really the only requirement out of all this stuff here is step 1. So you really don't have any option other than doing that. Next, reinforcing along the way, making sure that you have this information drilled in your head, and you want to do it keyword along the way so you don't get to the end and you're trying to cram all this stuff in and you completely forgot what was in the first few chapters. Or maybe 5 chapters ago. You don't remember anything from 5 chapters ago. It happens very easily because if you don't use it, you lose it. So you need to reinforce along the way. That's why we offer this MP3 audio review. It's a great tool to help you make sure you're listening. And there's a bunch of other ways. We also offer digital flashcards. The digital flashcards are actually included with our course. And we have a bunch of other study materials. These are just the ones I would recommend out of our offerings because we actually have quite a few more study materials than this. And if you're at all concerned of which one of these you should do, call into our staff where they're all trained to know which one of these tools is going to be the best one for your particular situation based on what you're trying to do. If you're reinforcing, I would recommend typically the MP3 audio review, but we do have other tools available for that. Flashcards are great, and in our courses you get these flashcards automatically, whether you're doing classroom or online. But that's step 2. Step 3, you need to test your knowledge. You need to make sure that you do know this information. It's not just enough to learn the information and to reinforce it because maybe you thought you learned it and you thought you reinforced it, but what testing your knowledge will tell you is that you don't actually know the information, or it will tell you that you do know the information, and if you do know the information, when you're testing the information, that'll help give you the confidence. But if you find yourself at some point where you're not 100% confident in the material, where you can't tell yourself with conviction that you know this, that you know this, that you know this, that you've gone through and reviewed every question, you've answered every single question until you got them right, so that exam question bank is great. We do offer a print version of that as well if you'd rather have something on paper, so call into us and we can help you out with that. Last one is being confident. This is really important because, like I said, this exam is meant to deceive you. It's meant to distract you. It's meant to really test you on whether or not you know the material. You can't fake it through this exam. It's impossible. I used to say it's basically impossible, but no, it's impossible to fake your way through this exam. They write this exam. If you know the material, this is a very easy exam. Yes, it is a little mentally wearing, but if you know the material and you're confident in that knowledge of the material, these are very easy exams to pass. But if you're not confident in your knowledge, or maybe you think you're confident, but you're not confident really, you're just saying you're confident, you're just going all positive thinking. The positive thinking is great, but positive thinking will not get you to pass your exam alone. It'll help you pass your exam, but alone it will not do anything other than help you walk out of the center with a smile on your face when you don't pass. So positive thinking is great, don't get me wrong. You definitely want to have positive thinking, but you need to have confidence in the knowledge. So these basically are the 4 key steps you need to go through to pass your exam on the first try. And like I said, if you want to get any of these, go to our website, tampaschoolofrealestate.com. That's tampaschoolofrealestate.com. You should find a link right to this video on here. We actually have a bunch of these other Ask the Instructor. Usually the Ask the Instructors, we're going through and we're actually solving problems. So there's a lot of great free videos you could watch to help you prepare for the exam. But what is great about these study materials, they really kind of hone in I know when I'm on this little Ask the Instructor show and I'm maybe solving some problems, we get into some more details that aren't really too important for your exam. These study tools, that's not the case. The goal of these study tools is to get you to know the key points that you need to know to pass your exam. So call into us, visit our website. Again, that phone number is 813-928-0106, and we can help talk you through and figure out which one of these is going to be best for you based on what you're trying to do. The weekend review class is great. The exam question bank is great. The MP3 review is great. We have a lot of other study tools as well, but these are the top three, I would say, if you're trying to pass your exam on the first try. And then the other option, like I said, is to go through, take the exam, put yourself through all the headache and heartache and pain and rejection and the fees that you take for every exam to let the state testing center say you're not ready. But you're going to need to do these things. If you do these things, you should pass your exam on the first try. There's no question about it if you're really working these steps. So that's all I've got for you guys today. If you have questions, give us a call. We'd love to talk to you, 813-928-0106. Visit us on our website, tampaschoolofrealestate.com. And if you guys have enjoyed this show today, make sure you let us know, send in some likes, maybe share this to a friend. If you have a friend that's trying to pass their exam, share them this video, because I'm sure they would, because it's taken me time. As an instructor, I didn't even know these were the 4 steps that you need to pass your exam on the first try, but this is really kind of distilled down to the key things that you need to do. If you work these steps and you work them correctly, you should pass your exam. So definitely share this out to your friends and family. Subscribe to our videos, because we do all kinds of videos to help you, our students, our friends of our students, or even if you're not our student and you just like watching us, that's fine too. Tune in every Wednesday at 12 noon Eastern Time. Ask the Instructor. Also tune in on Fridays, 12 noon Eastern Time. We do one called State of Real Estate, and that's for masterminding and growing your real estate business. So that's a really great one that you can watch, and you can really watch before you get your license, but until you have your license, this is what you need to focus on right here. Getting through these 4 steps so you can earn that license and you earn the right to watch that State of Real Estate show to learn how to grow and develop your real estate business. But I hope you guys have enjoyed it today. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you next week. I'm John Carissimo. This show is brought to you by the Tampa School of Real Estate. You guys have a good week.